Hi, this is Chris with firstcenturychristianity.net. I got a question for you. Did you know that the book of Revelation quotes the Old Testament no less than 505 times? And this is quotations plus allusions or references to the Old Testament. And the book of Revelation is almost 70% of the content is some sort of reference to things that were written before the Gospels. This is pretty significant information. The path that we are on, those of us who follow first century Christianity, going back to the faith it once delivered, is a reorientation of our approach to the Bible and the order in which we learn and consume information. Almost all of us who came up through mainstream Christianity, whether it's Catholic or Protestant or Orthodox, we come to it from the perspective that the New Testament was a new religion and a complete break from the Old. Now, maybe that's an overstatement for your own personal experience, but if you stop and think about it, if you ask a Protestant person today where to start reading the Bible, they say the book of John. They don't even say the book of Matthew, the first book of the New Testament. They tell you to start reading the book of John and then to read the book of Romans and then get to the rest of the New Testament and the Old Testament if you ever get time for it. The Old Testament is often used as almost like a glossary of terms or a reference work. When you want to prove something in the New Testament, you go find it in the Old. And if it matches, it's great. If it doesn't match, it doesn't really matter because the New Testament's what matters, right? That's not true at all. Not even close. The Messiah did not come to start a new religion. The Messiah came to build on what was already established. The New Testament, the coming of the Messiah, is a step in a 6,000-year process, that a 6,000-year long process, roughly about 4,000 years into it, is when the Messiah came the first time. He came because of the prophets, because of history, because of what was prophesied. The plan of salvation was laid out at the foundation of the world, and most of our Bibles are Old Testament, which informs the New Testament. The New Testament is built on the Old. The Messiah didn't come to start a new religion. He came to continue the faith of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of Moses, Ezekiel, Joel, Malachi. You get the picture. This is why there's so many references in the New Testament to the Old, because it's one book. It's one book, it's one story, it's one path that mankind is on. Now, as we discussed in last week's Torah portion, the order that Paul refers to an order of civilization in Romans 13, that was established in Genesis. Paul is not making a new decree there when he tells us to be subject to the authorities. He is continuing what was started with Abraham, maybe even before. Abraham, after he conquered the people that took his nephew captive and freed them, stopped and gave proper honor and respect to the priest of the day, Melchizedek. Abraham realized that there was an order and that he had to honor Yahweh through Yahweh's anointed one, which is this mysterious fellow named Melchizedek. But it shows that Abraham honored the order and honored the authorities. It carries on with Abraham when he goes to buy Sarah's tomb. This is the part we were talking about last week, that he makes a very public deal where he negotiates the fair market value of that land in public with witnesses so that everything is done above board. He doesn't take anything for free. He honors the people who own the land, and he honors the people who govern the land by operating within the established order of civilization. Paul went on to talk about honoring people for the sake of conscience, honoring authorities for the sake of conscience. Well, what went on from last week's Torah portion is Abraham was too old to go back to his homeland and get a bride for his son Isaac, so he has to send his servant to go do this most blessed chore. Now, that servant did what he was supposed to do, even though he was completely out of sight of his master. He could have taken all of it and ran. He could have done any number of treacherous things, but he didn't do that because he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh and the sight of his master, Abraham, when nobody was looking for conscience sake. He still honored the order and was subjected to his authority, which was Abraham. You see, honoring authorities is a virtue that was established in the earliest part of the Torah. Paul is not giving some new edict. He's not saying that before he wrote that you could not follow the established order. Of course, there are limitations to this when people become tyrannical, as we understand, when Laban, who is the brother of Rebecca, Isaac's wife, later the next time he's a treacherous person, and so he has to be dealt with. So there is a limitation to honoring the order, but your default position has to be honoring the subjected rulers, because that's what the Torah says. And Paul is repeating that virtue in Romans 13. Our challenge in this walk is reorienting our minds, reestablishing our foundation as the Torah. We've been conditioned to establish and learn that the New Testament is the foundation of truth, and the rest of the Bible is just handy. It's just there. But that's not the way. It's a chore to reorient yourself. But when we understand these big truths like the book of Revelation, if we want to understand what's going to happen in the future, we have to understand what has happened from the beginning of time. When Revelation is quoting the Old Testament, when Matthew 24 quotes the abomination of desolation, that has happened once before. It's happened twice before, actually. It had happened once before at that point in time. When we talk about the Messiah, the identity of the Son of God and what his mission was and what his mission is to do, we have to look at the Old Testament prophets. And we must not add or subtract from their words. Now, the New Testament does reveal new information. And sometimes the Bible does make changes. It does take a different turn. We see that the temple was rent in two, the temple curtain was rent in two when the Messiah passed away, indicating that the way into the Holy of Holies has been revealed through the body and blood of the Messiah. This is a change in the Torah. Changes are okay, but not arbitrary changes and not making stuff up out of whole cloth. It's a very difficult and long walk, and we have to get on the path, and we're not going to see the end of that path until the Messiah returns. But if we want to understand what that looks like, if we want to understand what we're supposed to be doing today in anticipation of the return of the Messiah, what he's going to do when he returns, and what we're going to do for 1,000 years after his return, that knowledge begins in Genesis 1. The Messiah told the scribes and the Pharisees when they were challenging him that if they were to believe Moses, they would believe him because Moses wrote of him. So if we want to learn about him, we also need to start with Moses. I hope you have a blessed week, and thank you for watching. May Yahweh bless you and keep you in the name of his son, Yeshua, as we all walk on this path to reestablish the Torah as the foundation of our faith. Have a blessed day.